Well, hello there. Today we will talk about the level 80 and 85 experience and how to reach the heroic dungeons in maybe most efficient way, or maybe not the most efficient way, but maybe one way that you will prefer more than the other. We will talk about how to efficiently farm reputation that we actually need in level gap of 80 to 85 while we're questing, and which faction we will actually go first as soon as we enter the Cataclysm zones. So as you know, the Cataclysm expansion starts at level 80, unlike Outland, which was the Burning Crusade, and Northrend, which was the Wrath of the Lich King. The Outland was starting at level 58, not this level 60, and Northrend started at level 68, not 70. I'm telling this because level 60 and level 70 was a level gap in the previous expansions, prior to the ones I talked about, respectively, you could say. Which means that the classic level gap was level 60, but you could enter Outland at level 58 already, and get your first quests there. Same applies for Northrend. But the Cataclysm is a little bit different. You will have to reach level 80 in Northrend to get your first quest at the Hero's Call port, which will be called Hero's Call Vashir and Hero's Call Mount Hyjal. Once you get to the Stormwind or Orgrimmar respectively again, you will be able to choose either of those. The choice of the first one will determine on which faction you will be going first as a leveling, because Mount Hyjal has its own specific faction inside it, which will be used only in Mount Hyjal and only through all the questing in Mount Hyjal. While Vashir is actually spanning through 3 different zones, and the faction is called Earthen Ring. So the Earthen Ring will be starting, you could say, in Vashir, and you have to complete Vashir at least halfway through, because the Earthen Ring will have their quartermaster in Vashir. The zones that Earthen Ring spans through as a faction is Vashir, where we will find their quartermaster, then it's a Deepholm, and Twilight Highlands. And there is a big difference in levels between these zones. While Vashir is level 80 zone, Deepholm is level 82 zone, and Twilight Highlands is level 84, 85 zone. Every single faction will have its tabards that you can buy at friendly as a reward and use it to farm reputation in dungeons. At Honored, you will be getting these here items that you can see on the screen. As you can see, they're all around good for everyone. At Revered, there is an enchant for tanks, Helm enchant for tanks, and it takes a shift more towards healer and caster items later on. At Exalted, all agility users can get a very nice ring, and then all the casters and healers are also going to be pretty happy with the items they get at Exalted, except for the leather users. They're not getting anything. Next faction you will meet at level 80 is going to be Guardians of Hyjal. Same as with the Earthen Ring of Vashir, you can access it at level 80 through the Hero's Call board. Upon reaching honor with this faction, you'll be greeted by a choice of all around good items for most classes and specs. At Revered, you are greeted with more caster and healer wise items, and a agility neck, and also a enchant for casters and healers. At Exalted with Guardians of Hyjal, you are greeted with the mail boots, mail agility boots, a cloth belt for healers, a DPS plate belt, and a cloak for tanks. But there are 2 things that you have to remember. First, to access heroics you need an average item level of 329 across all your equipped items. And second, there is a thing called armor specialization for everyone that uses leather and above, which grants you extra 5% of primary stats if you have matching type of armor equipped in all slots. This does neglect us the usage of these items, but it's possible to equip all of the items you will see and you can equip to actually get inside the dungeon and then swap those items back to your primary armor class. It's a little bit cheesy, but it gets the job done at the end of the day. So why not use it? Especially since you are going to be using all of the PvE items, which grant you more bonuses than you could get from PvP items. So after we are done with Bashir, Hyjal, we go to Deep Home. In Deep Home we are going to be meeting with the Earthen Ring again, and another faction which I will be talking about at the end of the video, because it's an extremely important and deserves a separate part of this video for it. After Deep Home, we are gonna go to Uldum and a new faction, zone-specific faction again, which is called Ramkahen. These are cat-like creatures created by the Titans that were infected by Curse of Flesh again, and from stone turned back to fleshy cat form. As you can see at Honored, you're getting an all-around good items again in here, depending on your armor class, of course. Same applies for Revered. You're greeted by all-around good items that are applicable to all classes, and an agility enchant on your helm slot. When you hit Exalted, you are greeted by a pretty interesting choice of healer items and strength items, one being a tank item, one being a DPS item, and no agility items at all. And Ramkahan also gives access at Exalted for 2 camel mounts that you can buy for a hefty amount of gold. So for all mount collectors, Ramkahan is going to be a mandatory faction to do, even though you could skip it if you did both Ashir and Mount Hyjal and then went for Deep Home. But I'd say it's not that worth to skip it, especially since even though agility users are not getting that much of a stuff at Exalted, they are getting at Revert their agility enchant, and there's nothing else that you can get for a helm enchant. So at least reaching Revert is going to be mandatory, especially since the quests in Uldum, doing all of the quests in Uldum will get you pretty close to Revert. So it's going to be only a question of a couple of dungeons with the Tabber to reach at least Revert faction. Then you can go how you want. After we're done with Uldum, we are greeted by the final location of the Cataclysm, or the first phase of the Cataclysm, which is going to be the Twilight Highlands, level 84-85 zone, which has 2 different factions, 2 different faction-specific factions, which is the Wildhammer clan for Alliance and Dragonmark Orcs for the Horde. I will go only over the Alliance part because the items are identical. The only difference that's going to be for Horde is the name of the item. So, when we reach 100 with Wildhammer clan or Dragonmark Orcs, we are going to be greeted by a bunch of caster-related items except for the agility legs for leather users, which is kind of interesting, considering that every single other faction had an all-around choice at Honored. At Revert, we are greeted by a strength head slot enchant, and a couple of strength items, plus basically an all-around item choice, more of a blade-based, that is. And the Exalted version of the items provides no alternative for strength DPS for Wildhammer clan and Dragonmark Orcs. Now that we have our items out of the way, it's time we spoke about the enchants as the reputation rewards. So as you can see on the screen, these are the enchants you're going to get from all of the factions I spoke about before, which are the Hyjal, Guardians of Hyjal, Earthen Ring, Wildhammer clan, Ramkahen, and of course the Dragonmark Orcs as the alternative for the Wildhammer clan. But what do I do with my shoulder enchants? because the Northrend, Wrath of the Lich King, had a version of shoulder enchants for everyone, which was the Sons of Hodir faction. So what do I do about that? Cataclysm has it covered. Deep Home has a faction called Terrazane, which provides you with enchants for your shoulder slot. Once you reach Honored, you're greeted by these here enchants that you can see on the screen. But once you reach Revert, there are not going to be any enchants, there are going to be rings. Free 46 rings for all classes and specs. Pretty amazing rings. They're going to be useful for everyone. And of course, once you reach Exalted, you are going to be greeted by the same enchants as you had on Honored, but a more powerful version, which is going to be amazing looking on your shoulders. Now, the questing itself. The question that everyone's going to be asking, the newcomers, the beginners to the Cataclysm, is, oh shit, I reached the level 85. I want to reach a level 85. I still don't have a 329. Why is that? What did I do wrong? I did all the zones in the level as they were coming at me. The answer to that is pretty simple. First of all, you do have to understand that dungeon rewards are going to be weaker than the next zone's quest rewards to some extent. So this means that you have to optimize your questing through locations in order to get the item level you need for heroic dungeons. So throughout level 80 to 83, we are gonna go through our usual routine. We choose either Rashir or Mount Hydro depending on what items or enchants we need. Then we go to Deep Home, quest there, and as soon as we hit level 83 in Deep Home, we're gonna drop everything in there and go for the Hero's Call board and pick up a quest, Hero's Call Uldum, which will send us to Uldum and Ramkahan faction. The point here is not about the faction, the point here is about the blue items that we're going to be getting from some of the elite quests, or quest chain ending quests. Those items are going to be at the level 325, and are going to be providing us with a little bit of a boost towards those 329 average item level. After we're done and we have reached level 84, we want to drop Uldum as well completely and go for the Hero's Call board again and pick up the quest Hero's Call Twilight Highlands, which will send us to Twilight Highlands, which is a level 84-85 zone, and we'll have green quest rewards of item level 318 and blue quest rewards of item level 333. Which is going to be a massive upgrade. If you love questing, if you want to do quests, if you want to look at all the zones, that's going to help you. Especially if you have some crafting materials, crafting professions, and you can get yourself some crafted gear, be that a PvE gear or a PvP gear. You can craft a 333 PvE armor with random options, or 339 PvP gear. I don't really want to go with the PvP gear inside the dungeon, but if you're that kind of person, then fine, be your way. And never forget about doing the normal dungeons, the random dungeon finder, which will also be giving you justice points. The 3 dungeons at the end of the day are going to be Lost City of the Tolvir, Grim Bateau, and the Vortex Pinnacle, which are going to be netting you items of 333 item level as well. But for the justice points, you can actually buy 346 item level items from a vendor, either in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, for the price of from 950 to 2200 justice points per item. So, with that, we've come to a conclusion at the end of the video. Thing is that there are plenty of options how to get to 329 item level, and I personally did it by just questing. and occasionally doing dungeons as a DPS. As a DPS, you don't get into dungeons that often, but if you are questing and you just queue up for either random dungeon or specific dungeon, you're gonna be getting those points, you're gonna be getting that gear, and by the time you finish Twilight Highlands, you are gonna be 100% available, ready and available for heroic dungeons at 329 item level. And with that, we are done with the explanation about this kind of stuff. It's not that hard, pretty simple. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. I'm always answering in all the comments. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did like this content. If you want to see this stuff coming up, kind of stuff like this. The next thing that I'm gonna be working on is dungeon guides. All of the dungeon guides for the Cataclysm, as well as raid guides. And hopefully that will work out nicely. So I'll see you next time, and have a good day.